Now, as you know, NFX invests in seed stage companies, $1 to $3 million. We've invested in lots of marketplaces, and this has been over the last 15 years. Back in June of 2015, I, along with my friend Oz Alon from Honeybook, who you heard from earlier, wrote an article and published it in TechCrunch in what we called the market networks. And this came out, and it was shared 30,000 times. It was quite surprising. It might be more by now. But a lot of people talked about it. This was 4 years ago, and since then we've invested in 16 market networks. And let me tell you about the ideas of the market network and how it's played out over the last few years. Because a market network really isn't a thing any more than a marketplace is a thing. All marketplaces are different. All market networks are different. But the market network's principles can be applied to all of your businesses in different ways. And so hopefully you'll see those principles here today and think about how they might apply to your business. So here's the basic idea, is that we've seen marketplaces and we've seen networks. And a marketplace, from our definition, is just transactions among multiple buyers and sellers. Right, that's simple idea, but multiple buyers and sellers, and it's about transactions. You go there for the transaction. Okay. Then you've got these networks where you go there for the identity and the communication, right? That's the Facebook, that's the WhatsApp, that's the Twitter. Okay, you go for identity and communication. They're different, but now that we're used to all of them, we can start to see how we might merge those interfaces. We might merge the functionality of those two things. And in fact, what you see is that in the real world, we are doing that in multiple vertical industries. The marketplace and the social, the relationships, we've heard about how SMBs really like their suppliers. That is both a network and a marketplace, right? They're going there for transactions, but there's a relationship, there's identity and communication. So that's already happening in the real world, but we haven't digitized it so much yet. So what we've seen is that by adding SaaS software to these SMBs, and then letting them draw their offline relationships and marketplaces onto the digital platform, that creates these market networks and allows people to form the old relationships. Now, here was the old idea from 4 years ago, right? This was the original idea. The idea was that somebody like an event planner would, as a service provider, just one of an example of service providers, would get a SaaS tool that we would build for them. That SaaS tool would enable them to communicate with their client. The client and the event planner are now happy. They're communicating better, they're making transactions, everybody's happy. They don't really need anybody else. However, for complex service projects, which are most service projects that isn't Uber, you need other people involved. It could be photographers, could be florists, could be the DJ. Different people who are also SMBs want to be connected into where the money is coming. The money is coming from the blue node, and the red people are all the suppliers, okay? And so this was the original idea, and this was one of the things that Honeybook was pursuing. We saw AngelList pursuing this. We see TravelJoy pursuing it today in the travel space. We see HeadNote pursuing this sort of thing in the legal space, et cetera, okay? And this is the idea. Another way, and everyone's collaborating around a project, essentially. And the other way to look at this is to call it an end-sided marketplace, right? End-sided marketplace. Now, this exists in many forms. What we've learned over the last about 2 years ago is that what we saw was that these verticals could get grabbed, and you could build the software around the vertical, but very quickly you realized this thing needs to bleed out horizontally. These businesses want to become horizontal over time, like a Shopify, like a Square, okay? Starting in a vertical is a good place to start, but pretty quickly you want to aim your sights toward being more of a horizontal, because these principles can apply not to just, let's say, AngelList or to event planning or something like that, but they apply all the way across service layers, okay? And so that's where Honeybook is going. That's what we're seeing other market networks we've invested in start to figure out how to do, because you can't just be vertical and build a $10 billion company. You can build a $500 million company, you can build a $1 billion company, but it's hard to get past that if you don't. So that was one of our learnings over the last few years around these market networks. You might start in pizza, but then you go into other horizontals. So that was one of the learnings. So let's talk about the 9 principles, the 9 attributes of successful market networks, and maybe you'll see something in your business in here, and you can take it away. So typically this is for more complex services. So an Uber and a Lyft is a pretty simple service. You go from A to B, you don't get killed, everybody's happy. Okay, pretty simple. Most things aren't that simple. Whether it's an architectural project or an event or a legal case, there's more people involved, it's more complex, you can't really plan it out. In cases like a consulting project, investment banking, venture capital, these are all more complex processes. These things lend themselves better to a market network. These are longer term projects with more people involved. The second thing that you'll start to notice for when you want to use a market network type principle is that people matter, right? On the Uber and Lyft example, does it really matter who drives you? No, they're nice, you're nice. Do they really care who they drive? No, you're pretty nice. Almost all of us are nice. So no one really cares. But with these sorts of things, you actually care about who is it that's architecting your house? Who is it that is consulting to you about your business? That sort of thing. So when you've got individuals and they care about who they are, this is the other part where you're going to see a market network. When you want multiple professionals collaborating around a project, all right, this is another opportunity. Now, what's so nice about this is that this creates natural viral effects and natural network effects. Because if you can get people collaborating around a project, they are going to want each other involved. So if you can just get one of them and they're working with 3, 4, 8 people, they're going to want to bring them in to the SaaS software and collaborate. That allows you to grow faster and also lock them in. So this has advantages both in the growth model and in the retention part of the model. All right. The next thing you might notice is that because the people matter, they really care about their profiles. One of the things we heard earlier about from Honeybook was that people wanted to look good. They as individuals, you want to look good. We know that the Uber and Lyft drivers want to have really good high ratings. If they drop below 4.8, they feel awful. Okay? And they want you to feel awful. They say, hey, I noticed you have a 4.7. You're like, what? How's that possible? What did I do? So people care about how they look. In particular, when money's on the line, people really, really care. And one of the reasons LinkedIn has proven so durable over the last 18 years, despite the fact that I think we would rate their product at around a 4 out of 10, is that people really care about their status, and they care about how they look. And so building beautiful profiles, good profiles, complete profiles that help these professionals have status, have pride, is really, really helpful. You don't see that typically in things where the people don't matter. So profiles, think about how you might build those profiles and make them better to lock people in, to get people wanting to use your market network. The fifth thing out of 9 is that these systems help professionals build more relationships. All right? They have relationships in the real world. They want to maintain them. Maybe your software can help you deepen the relationships they already have. Maybe your software can help them build new relationships they didn't have before and then track those relationships. Okay? Most SaaS software doesn't let you do that. Most marketplaces don't let you do that. Networks let you do that. And bringing that functionality into a transactional environment, I think enhances your customer's relationship to the software product you're building for them. All right, the sixth thing is that you're going to build in for them a way to get more business, to get referrals. Referrals for most of these SMBs is their lifeblood. Okay, so can you think about how you build software and systems and just features for them that aggregate those referrals and bring them in? One of the key things that we notice is if you go to a marketplace, people will come into the marketplace and say, okay, I'm a supplier, where's my revenue? One of the reasons that marketplaces are so durable with a network effect is because once you've got the buyers and the sellers there, you got liquidity, everybody's happy. However, when you're first getting going, when you're chicken or egg, when you've got the chicken or egg problem, it's hard to get enough demand in your marketplace. So you have to spend all the money you raised from GGV to acquire, because we would never do that in effect, to acquire all this demand. And the supply is expecting you to supply them with the demand. However, if you go to them and say, hey, no, this software is for you to manage your demand better, then you don't need to go spend all that money getting the demand for them. They'll actually bring the demand in themselves. Okay? And then as the demand comes in, then you say, hey, why don't you refer this out to somebody who's not competing with you, but who could collaborate with you on this project? And then the viral stuff goes, the money gets shared around, more people get happy. Okay, so you offload the demand generation to your supply sometimes if you do this referrals flow right. All right. Number 7, what you'll see once you bring the software into their lives is that you are increasing their transaction velocity, and you should be able to track that. And then you want to reflect that back to them. That, hey, we're making you more money because in a month, in 4 months, you're able to do more business than you could do before because of the efficiency of the software, because of the referral flow, because you're winning more business, because you look better on your profile. For all the different things you're providing them, you should see them getting more revenues. You should see them getting their revenues faster because you're managing the payments for them. Okay? And they should enjoy their work more. They should feel prouder about their work. They should brag about their work. You should help them brag. You know, maybe you can pull a Demand Force. We have one of the founders of Demand Force here. It's a company I've loved for years. I wish they hadn't sold. I wanted them to be a $10 billion company. But they did a wonderful job by helping these SMBs brag on Yelp, brag on Google, so that they would feel great about their work. And your system can help them do that and make them feel better about their work. And every time there's a transaction, have an opportunity to brag about it. Number 8, second to last, you should see that this software helps them maintain their ongoing relationships. Okay, helps them with retention. You know, and number 9, you should allow them to lower their transaction fees. Okay, so what you want to do, of course, is manage the transactions through your platform, have the payments come through you. If you don't, you're not a marketplace. If you don't, there's no point in doing this business. It's just a lifestyle business. You have to control those transaction fees. You should be sitting with them and show them that, hey, look, for ongoing customers where you have an ongoing relationship, we'll charge you less because we don't want you going around us, disintermediating us. But for new people that you find through the platform, then we're going to charge you more. Okay, this is often this bifurcation of the percentage rate you take that doesn't typically exist in most marketplaces. A little delicate to deal with sometimes, but once communicated, once people are on board, people can handle it. The other thing that you can do to lower transaction fees, as Pete has written in a recent essay that he did on NFX, is to add fintech products to your marketplace. Add your insurance, add your supplier chain financing, that sort of thing. Add vendor financing to the transactions that are going through the system. You can actually add fintech products to your marketplace. It's a big trend we're seeing, and we're largely seeing it because of the market networks we've invested in over the last 4 years. And what they're experiencing with how they need to increase liquidity, how they need to lower transaction fees, and build out the rest of their system. So that's another thing to really look at. Sometimes these marketplaces won't actually hit liquidity. They won't actually spin up and start growing really quickly until you add those fintech products in, because the people need those fintech products in order to reach liquidity faster or in order to close at a rate that makes your CAC work or makes your growth rate work. So keep experimenting. That's another lever that you can use in this type of business. So there's lots of verticals where people can start, and many of these verticals are big enough to build billion-dollar companies, and most of them haven't been tackled yet. Once you get to your billion-dollar company, you need to be looking at your $10 billion company, and that requires you again to go horizontal, which is the stage that HoneyBook passed about 2 years ago. Okay. And there's actually there's a list of common product features. Each of these companies is building essentially the same set of features. However, what's been fascinating to us is, and we've had 3 companies come to us and say, hey, we're going to build a platform so that all the market networks can use our back-end infrastructure and they'll all build on top of us. And I said, yeah, interesting. We looked at that, and what we realized is that depending on which vertical you're starting in, it's really, really different. And that you can't have a platform for all the market networks. It just doesn't work. It's too detailed. It's too complex for each. The language involved, et cetera, et cetera. Before you own that vertical, and before you get a chance to broaden out, it's got to be very specific in order to win the market. So none of those companies went anywhere, and we're just continually investing in these verticals. Whether it's healthcare, we've invested in Medina's Health, which is in the used healthcare equipment market. Like you can't believe the number of $100 billion U.S. markets there are that need a market network still between all the people doing them, and they are powered by the SMBs that exist today. So I always love that Tom Cruise movie where he says, "Help me, help you." Help me help. You've got to go to these professionals and say, let me help you do your thing, as opposed to let me do your thing for you, in a way. And again, don't always promise to bring them leads. If you start the conversation with leads, that's all they're going to want. And if you don't provide them a lead, then they'll be upset, and 2 weeks later they'll think you're crap. They'll walk away. Okay. So if you have leads, give them the leads. But if you don't promise that right up front. It really skews the conversation. Okay. Okay. So think to yourself. One of the things we've seen is when we talk to marketplaces, they typically have two sides of the marketplace. And then the big aha for them, which I'll give you today, is, can I add another node to my marketplace? Is there a third party that's missing from this two sides that if I added them, all three of them would be happier? Now, this is different from a three-sided marketplace. Different. A three-sided marketplace requires all three nodes, all three types of nodes to be there for liquidity to take place. This is a very difficult type of business to run. Very few big businesses like this. But if you do have a two-sided marketplace, adding a third node as a nice to have might actually start to give you some really interesting acceleration and allow you to start thinking about how you go more horizontal. Okay? The next thing to ask yourself is, of the different nodes that I can see in these markets, who is the hungriest node? Who is the person who's going to be using this daily, perhaps all day, and they will drive the rest of the people into the network? Right? So for instance, if I'm Poshmark, I might say, oh, what about stylists? Could I add stylists to my two-sided marketplace? And those people might work 8-10 hours a day helping other people style, and then help increase liquidity in my marketplace between buyers and sellers of used fashion. Just as an example. You just start thinking this way. You know, could I add boutiques as a third node? Because maybe boutiques could then help my buyers and sellers grow. Could I add brands? Could I add fashion brands to my two-sided marketplace? Would that increase my liquidity and increase my purview? Would it give me options to do more vendor financing on, whatever? People could lease out their dresses. I'm just making stuff up, but whatever. That type of thinking can help. The third thing to ask yourself is, okay, I've got this marketplace. I'm serving SMBs. I've got some SaaS. Can I, if you're a SaaS vendor to SMBs, can I add a marketplace? If you're a marketplace to SMBs, can I add some SaaS? How can I grab their daily workflow? All right. And then the last thing I guess I would point out, as I mentioned before, is, can I add profiles? What would it do to my SaaS product? What would it do to my marketplace if I added really beautiful profiles and let people reveal their identity online or on mobile in a way that really pleases them, makes them proud, makes them want to connect and be associated with my brand? Okay. All right, so that's the end of that. Do we have any questions? And there's more essays about stuff like this on essays at fx.com/essays. It's all out there to read. There's videos and stuff, and we just put it all out there because the more everybody understands, the more companies we have to invest in and what the hell. Yeah.